Hi, and welcome to the Gapsavvy Podcast, where we translate the fast evolutions of tech into what actually hits the books. I'm Angela Liu, a former instructor with KPMG's national office, product strategist, and founder of Gapsavvy. I've closed the books, written the memos, and even helped build an ERP from scratch. I'm here with my co-host, Devon Coombs, advisor to the CAO and lecturer at San Jose State University.
What exactly do you use in AI? What exactly do you use and how do you use it? And what would you recommend to us based on that?
Yeah. Okay. So my current AI stack is I have Chat GPT. And so I have their business plan, which used to be called Teams. And that does not train off my data without having to toggle something. And I've had Chat GPT the longest. So I think that's no surprise to anyone. Something that Chat GPT built in very early on is this concept of memory. And memory took information from my chats and stacks those. So it understands my value system. It understands where I work. It understands details about me. So over time, it has tailored the responses to sound more and more like me. Within ChatGPT, I've actually really started to use projects, which are slightly different than GPTs, but a project is a way that you can organize your chats, which is mind-blowing because mine were getting really unorganized. And those projects could be something like newsletter, right? So that could be the voice of my newsletter, and it has project-specific memory so that it will stay in the context of that space and organize those chats. I also use the functionality quite a bit of GPTs. So that is when I don't want to keep writing the same prompt and I'm doing something over and over again, I'll have built a pre-built GPT, which is essentially like a prompt template. So it does the same thing every time. I have one for research where I have all four big four firms, their revenue guidance as a knowledge input, and I'll use that as a resource to compare all four guides at the same time. It's my first glance, and then I'll dig deeper. I, of course, use that, I use it as a business coach. Sometimes I use it as a co-founder. I use it to use different prompts to make sure that it is not agreeing with me, so the syncophancy is not super high. I ask it to be brutally honest so that I can improve because it always wants to help me, but I don't want it to be overly nice to me and I want it to be honest. So that's my ChatGPT world, and I still feel like, regardless where I've gone, I use that one the most, mostly because ChatGPT and OpenAI started memory very early on, which is a really important concept that I feel like people do not talk about enough. So it's way more personalized to me than the other ones that I use. I also use Claude from Anthropic. I think their coding abilities, so if I want to make something fun like a little learning game, or if I just want to see if I can code a video game, or if I'm doing actually data analysis, I actually really love Claude. And so a lot of the infographics that I do in my newsletters are actually through Claude and not through OpenAI, partially because within Claude and early on, they had artifacts. And artifacts are really, I don't actually think they're called artifacts anymore. I'm not sure what the new name is. But essentially, it can write and execute code in the same space. So you get these beautifully designed, interactive pieces that you have a UI that is executed on top of it. And so you can see and iterate and include things a lot easier. I find Claude to be a lot more mild-mannered and a lot less hyperbole, which sometimes I like hyperbole, but it seems very grounded. But I use that a lot, again, for data analysis, infographics. It is just way better at Excel. It can read, like if you had drop-down tables on multiple tabs on Excel, it understands the data relationship between the different tables, which blows my mind and I think is amazing. It also has a plugin within Google Sheets. So Google Sheets also has AI functionality. Actually, while I was doing a share forum, I clicked into it and I realized they had an analyze data pre-built into that. I don't know when they released that. Probably similar to what I would expect from a Copilot agent mode in Excel, pre-built into Google Sheets now. I have Gemini, but I have not played with it a ton, mostly because you can only date so many of these things, and I only had time to, get to know a couple of them. They got memory less, so they got to know me a little less, and I just didn't. So maybe that's a 2026 goal. What I did use from Google, and it does blow my mind still, is Notebook LM, which is, I think, everyone's favorite. We've talked about this a lot. It started out with these amazing podcasts, then created these short form videos that were honestly the best training videos I've ever seen in accounting, which is a little embarrassing, but true.
Very true. Yeah.
I've just heard of people using this in so many different ways. It's actually probably my favorite thing to demo because outcome is so good just in one click. But having that be a repository of multiple docs, maybe training salespeople off of that, or being able to learn anything in one space, being able to pull internet links into one space, like all the YouTube videos that you thought you wanted to watch, but you really didn't have time for, you just stack them all in there and then it, summarizes it. That one is quite amazing. And to play with Nano Banana just because I really like that a lot in terms of the name, and I haven't, so maybe that's a 2026 goal. What else have I been using? Those are my base model ones, which is probably where I spend the most time. I might have forgotten one. I use Descript. We both use Descript. I think that's fun from an editor standpoint. I think that's it for now. So I'll reserve the right. I'm so curious. What do you use? And what do you use it for?
Well, that's the fascinating thing, right? I think what you're going to say is similar to what I'm going to say, is most of the work's done in the base models. So there's all these startups starting that are using niche use cases. But quite frankly, there's very few I use. And I normally have a vested interest in the ones I use, like TA-Bot, right? But my main workflows is and I'm still learning, and I'm always amazed by what these different workflows can do. I use Chat GPT too much. I was in the 0.1% of users in the review history, and it made me feel a little gross. Like, you spent more time with me than your wife. I'm like, oh shit, that's probably the best. But that's one side. Then I use Gemini and I use Claude, but I actually use all of them for very different use cases. And I agree with you. The memory makes you feel good and it helps you use it more, but it also makes me a little nervous because I realize I use it more. And so realizing some of those patterns of whatever that is, those cycles, those dopamine cycles or whatever they're triggering is dangerous. And I'm trying to be cognizant by varying my use cases. But I found, like you said, like Gemini, holy crap, Notebook LM. That thing is amazing because it now makes slide decks for you, and it makes slide decks for my college courses. If I put in like a good structured notes, it'll make slide decks with images better than I could have ever made. I made decks for a living at Google Cloud when I was chief of staff over there, right? It's amazing that Notebook LM can do that, give you images, give you audio, give you notebooks. It can make flashcards for my students, make interactive quizzes for my students. They're all accurate. That's amazing. So I think that's where Gemini rocks. Gemini is also great for search. If I'm looking for like a real fact on something, the deep research on Gemini, you can't beat it because it actually goes through the entire internet. And I feel like Google has an edge there. But I'm not a fan of its thinking models or its fast reasoning models when I use it day to day. They just picked memory up this last few weeks. So I know, so that's interesting, but it's a little late in the game. Yeah, it's crazy. But then they feel cost optimized. Like whenever I'm doing something, it feels truncated, it feels short. I normally work through very complex models. Like I'm making a case study based on this for my students today, or I'm trying to make an illustration to make a point to a client, and I want it to be relatively complex. The valuation, it'll obviously cut it short. And then it'll tend to over-index on other things that are happening within a conversation. So when I'm using Gemini, the big con from what I see is, let's say I have a conversation where I'm trying to go over a business proposal, but I also want to consider how that business proposal might impact my finances. And I want to consider how both of those together might impact my schedule. Something very like, it feels kind of basic. And I feel like ChatGPT would be very good at understanding. When I switch context like that within one thread in Gemini, it'll start getting confused. It'll be like, oh, so based on your business proposal, I think you should schedule your business proposal into your schedule. It's like, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm trying to figure out this next step. So it's interesting. It's more sequenced. So that's where it feels more cost optimized to me. ChatGPT is like my bread and butter still. I'll have a love-hate relationship with it. I won't call it for a few weeks. I'll be like, I miss you, baby. Come back to me. And so
I understand completely.
Yeah. And especially when they change the models, it can be very interesting, but it's catching up. And so one thing I didn't like it, like a lot of its responses, it tends to have AI tropes built into it. It can be a little more challenging to read outputs, but it does great when you want a specific task. So that's kind of my default when I want to polish an email or if I want to cater a message. One of my favorite things to do is like, if I'm really frustrated, I'll say something very like, tell this person to go screw off. And now I'll tell someone to screw, but tell it in a really nice way. Like somebody set that boundary. It'll be like, hey, James, it's really nice seeing you the other day. I really just think we should reconnect in a couple of weeks. It's like, yeah, that's way better than telling the guy to screw off, right? So it's really good at, I feel like mediating. I feel like it has like an emotional intelligence built into it. So whenever I'm working with people, I feel like ChatGPT does a really nice job mediating that. But when it gets into writing, it has too many of the AI tropes where the M dashes, it uses the word quietly an obscene amount of times. There's like a certain words that it will just use over and over and over again. So I tend to be careful with that, but its versatility is amazing. It still can do things like I can upload a technically complex, and I have pro subscriptions to all of these, right? But I'll upload something technical to it, and it will help me. My most common phrase, maybe that's helpful, prompting phrase is rate this out of 10 based on completeness, accuracy, and ease to understand. That's generally how I frame it, and I'll use that a lot. That was my most used phrase with Chat GPT. It's normally doing that like brutal honesty thing. Like, be brutally honest and give me a rating on these, and how can I make improvements? But I don't ask it to do the improvements. I do it myself. I'm using it as like a coach, and I feel like it does a really good job for that. Even with Pro, like you have usage based. So
it makes me mad. We're really getting somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. But it makes me be like, hey, that's probably a better business model. They're actually managing their costs. So good on Anthropic. Good on my friends over there. But man, things with Excel is amazing. Like I was working on a valuation model for my students, or something as simple like one of the most complex use cases recently is I'm working on this book, right? And the 10 laws of finance for my college students. And part of it's building out workbooks of complex models and multiple choice questions. And I wanted on a template. And previously you'd have to copy paste and get all these questions organized and review them. You could ask Claude, like through the artifact tool. Yeah. Be like, hey, can you make me, based on this branded template, can you make me a multiple choice question with explanations and a glossary of terms and all of this? You leave it for 5 minutes, you come back, and it's like this beautifully branded with UI that you could put on the internet with all the code, or a Google Docs version of it. But the valuation models themselves are like free cash flow to a firm, growth rates, Gordon growth, discounted cash flows. It does it all, and it does it all in the investment banker's code, like color coded. Like all the numbers are linked and color coded correctly, and it's beautiful. And maybe a few links are broken, but like a 7-tab workbook, it'll create in like 5 minutes. And so that stuff blows my mind. And what's crazy is then I checked Chat GPT recently on the thinking models, and it will start doing similar things. They're starting to build that functionality out.
Yeah.
Those are like playing around with those use cases are the core of my AI use. And then for some nuances like TA bot, just because I work with them so much, I use them for technical memo writing because I know there's this secure environment. Descript, I love it because it can edit videos very quickly. There's not a lot of other AI tools I really use, though, to be honest. I'm so ingrained in this space. I feel like the versatility of these LLMs are the real advantage. Another big one, numeric. Like you said, I've heard really good things about numeric. I haven't used it myself, but commonly hear great things from people on it.
We haven't even gotten into the accounting ones.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like. So many people ask me, and I feel like ask you, right, in your forums, what are you using these tools for? I know what you're saying, but at least from my view, most people aren't really extracting the value out of the LLMs, the base models themselves yet, compared to, and they're trying to jump the gun and go to these fine-tuned models or the software.
Yeah, that's part of what I hope we accomplish in this conversation for everyone that listens, but also like AI is not just flatly AI. AI is so like, it's like electricity. I think that still continues to be my favorite quote from Andrew Ng, which is like, it's like electricity. You can put electricity in all sorts of things, but it's going to change your life. And there's going to be all sorts of things built on top of it. Our banter and our talking about the base models now, I hope is the precursor to how we evaluate those accounting tools on top of it. Because there are a million AI startups, and some of them are great, and some of them are less great. But the whole point of all of this is we can all build super fast now. We all have a responsibility to understand at least what the base models do to some degree. If they haven't built that in, they're probably in trouble. But that has to be there. It's how did they engineer the context behind it? And is that context engineering and the data pools that you pulled from, were they thoughtfully designed from a subject matter expertise standpoint of where and why and when you chose to pull that context in? Because that is what you and me bring to the table. It's what all the professionals bring to the table, right? It's like, because I remember that time that I got burned and I forgot to look at that resource, right? That's context engineering, right? Should I pull or do I prompt to ask this question to make sure I didn't miss out on something that I know that I don't know? Or maybe do I ask questions so that I can expand to what I don't know? We just shared what we do with the base models. Even just us sharing was so much fun. I think that we should expect these models to continue to be neck and neck with each other. If Claude gets really good at Excel, we should expect OpenAI to come back within a month, for example. It might even become faster. It might be weeks. It might be days. I have no idea. This thing is, I mean, obviously all these companies are using their own software to code, and they all have more and more efficient pipelines in how they're building. So I expect that to continue. And a lot of people say, which one should I use? You should use the one that you have available to you. I thought your observation about Chat GPT and Claude were so interesting because you articulate something that I definitely feel and that I've been hearing in the space, which is Anthropic is really going after enterprise, right? It's really going after that we are trusted, we are safe, we are ready for enterprise. We will push an update and we will not break everything you built. I do feel like that is happening. And similarly, I can't get myself off of ChatGPT because they came out with memory like a year and some change earlier. Claude just got it at the end of this year. Gemini evidently just got it. That's crazy to me. So your addiction, maybe that's the right word, kind of is there, right? Which is much like, it's like an Instagram or like a Facebook or a TikTok, which is like, I know you so well. I know you so well that I know how to get you to keep talking to me. And that's scary, but it's also working. And I'm also getting value out of it. And maybe we, like keep each other in check because like it is a real thing, which is like, should I be talking? Like sometimes I'm texting, I have it on my phone and it's like black with like blue bubbles. And I'm like, wait, am I texting someone or am I texting ChatGPT? I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, it's really, as my joke I'll tell friends now is like, hey, just so you know, and I hope you know it's true, Angela, for you too. Like if you're working through something, you don't have to do it alone or with ChatGPT. Anytime you feel like texting ChatGPT, you can talk to a person. I'm still here too. And it's a weird thing to say, but I've said it to people, and I can't tell you how many people I've met who are like, "Oh," and it's like a realization of like, "Oh crap, maybe I shouldn't be texting that. Maybe I should text a friend these things." Or it's very interesting. And I'll add one thing that I think I'm curious on your take, and it'll probably be a good place to wind this, and we can continue the next one. Is I'll try to tie two ideas together. I recently got my surveys back from my students last semester, and I'm thankful to say I was like in the top 10% of lecturers or professors at San Jose State. So plug for myself. Students really like me, which was like a very proud moment for myself. But I had one regular critique, and I think this will resonate. They said, we really like Devon. Devon's really authentic and he cares about us. We don't like when he uses AI. That was statistically significant from this reason. They said it didn't like his brand is authenticity and trust. And when he uses AI, it feels like he's phoning it in. I thought that was really interesting, and I connected it to the market. So many people come to me, and I'm sure come to you, and say, what AI tool should I buy? What should I do? Because they trust us, they know us. And there's so much noise. Like you and I could go build an AI tool today and try to sell it, and people don't trust. There's so much noise in AI stuff that the internet hasn't really, it used to be a place of authenticity, of trust. Of like, oh, someone built something really cool. It took time. They invested money in it. It must be legit. Now it's so easy, people don't trust it anymore. And there's this really fascinating third thing to bridge it to, these three concepts, is, I don't know if you've been following the New Year's Eve thread. A lot of people are like, the New Year's parties suck. There's this new idea, like New Year's isn't fun anymore. That's the new theme, kind of like through the younger generation. And it's interesting when you think about it, it is like, well, 10 or 15 years ago, New Year's was a big deal. Like you went to Times Square. That was like a freaking big deal to go to Times Square.
It's not worth it.
Now it's not where people wear diapers and stuff, right? To just stand in the line. It's not worth it. And there's this, like, the reason, if you look at New Year's, we could always throw up a clip too. It's branded. It's not authentic anymore. It's like not a real party. The New Year's party in Times Square, it's not a place, it's a brand show, and everyone's going to be on TV. While if you go to Santa Monica Boulevard, on New Year's Eve, there's a really old billboard that ticks down to zero. And some people made up a block party around it, being like, let's go to this block party and like watch this thing click to zero and have some drinks. And it's become like one of the biggest ragers in Santa Monica. And it looks like a really fun party. And I'm trying to tie all these together where it's like trust and authenticity matter now more than ever. And we hear it all the time, like authenticity matters, but You can't be some person BSing. Like, you can't use these tools and write a book on AI. Anytime I've tried to write something and they see M dashes, people will be like, Devon, you're full of crap. You don't write, you just copy and paste AI stuff, right? It's like, you really still have to do the work. You really still have to understand things. You really still have to be trustworthy. And being a person now matters more than ever, so you can cut through the noise. But at the same time, all this stuff is also very, very valuable.
I love that as our closing thing, and to theme it out going forward, because that is the paradox and the tension that we straddle right now. That is the source of the noise. And it is the reason why being human right now and having real other human friends, whether that's in community or like you are more fast to pick up the phone and trust word of mouth than ever, because it is so easy to churn out a blog, churn out something fast on AI. You can feel the authenticity through it. Luckily, and this is embarrassing for me, but I'm going to admit it, I wish I was faster at churning out newsletters, but I still get in my own way. And in some way that makes it more authentic, but it also reminds me that there is the balance and the tension of how you use this to augment your humanness.
Yeah.
As opposed to augmenting this other skill we've been working on, sadly, all of our lives, which is to become accounting robots. Because that's useful too. You get through a lot, but now that's in some ways commoditized. So like really augmenting your humanness and what makes you, it's kind of cheesy, like authentic, but like you can feel it when people write, you can feel it. Like I get tired, like I can only scroll on LinkedIn for so long, but like who is doing the augmentation well? And how do you start differentiating the phone it in, even if it's just a feeling? Maybe we give some words to how to break that down. So I love that as an ending thought and a theme, and such great, very human feedback from your students. That just such a wonderful basis for words for how we dive into this year.